I remember the first, one of my first patients had leukemia, and he was a little boy about 3 years old, and he was dying from leukemia. And it was my first death of a child that I had experienced at that time. And I'm still in touch with that family over all of these years because I was of comfort to them, but most importantly, they were very good to me as a brand new nurse. And it was very spiritual relationship that we had. Yeah. Dealing with death of children and illness of children and the handicaps of children breaks my heart, but I seem to be drawn to doing that. It's probably one of the reasons why I ended up going into mental health nursing, and that's when I got a PhD in psychology and became a therapist. And I worked with children and families, again with special needs families, and did that for the rest of my life, really, my professional life. My name is Shirley Hanson, Shirley May Harmon Hanson. I was a nurse as my vocation since I was 22 years old, and I am now 84 years old. So I've had a long career as both a nurse and as also a therapist, mental health therapist. I graduated from Pacific Lutheran in 1960. My first job was in the operating room as a scrub nurse. I can remember my salary quite distinctly. It was $325 a month for 40 hours a week. I had a particular boss who was very demanding and very exacting, and it made me realize that the OR was not the best place for what I wanted to do with patients and caring for them. So I left there and I went to work on the floor of that hospital, and eventually worked on the floor at Children's Orthopedic Hospital in Seattle. And I loved working with children and families. When I was 11, I developed polio, and I can remember being very, very sick. I remember laying in the hospital room with an iron lung adjacent to my bed, because that's what they were expecting to happen. I can remember that the doctors doing spinal taps on my back. I can remember in particular a nurse who was such a good caretaker of me in my very young years. That was inspirational to me. And she was a woman of God, and she would talk about how the Lord was going to heal me, and that someday I would help to heal other people. It was very influential in my choice of careers at that time, and it was very influential in my staying very active in the church, the Lutheran church. I'm what you would call a cradle Lutheran. I was baptized a Lutheran, and I stayed in the Lutheran church all my life. When my family, both my parents were immigrants to this country, and they ended up in Montana. And my mother was from then called Bohemia, then called Czechoslovakia. My father was from England. And they didn't, my mother had Catholicism in her background, but they started us at the Lutheran Church in Havre, Montana, where I was baptized. I can remember the minister, I can remember going to Sunday school, and my family was very active in that church. When we moved to Spokane, we ended up going to Zion Lutheran Church. I was the organist when I was 14, 15 years old, and it was an old pump organ. And my dad was the president of the council, church council, and my mother was and the whole family was very active. But I remember a very unique spiritual experience that really kind of solidified my faith. And that came about as a result of the church sending me, along with several other people, to what we called Luther League. Luther League was the youth of the Lutheran Church. And I went to a Chicago a convention of the Luther League, and I was barely 16. And I was very moved by being at the convention, and the music and the preaching, and the people. It probably was my decision, solidifying my decision to become a nurse and to go to Pacific Lutheran. You can't work in the field of health, or any field maybe, where people are suffering and you can't do anything about it. And you wonder where God is and why God wouldn't allow this to happen. It was always challenging to my faith. Fortunately, I had a religious background that I could bring to the job, a spiritual background that I could comfort and help people. It still is a challenge for me sometimes, and to see victims of crime in the OR, in the ER. I will never understand human beings. I tried. I went to school to do that. But the evilness that mankind can bring to their own lives and other people's lives still is very upsetting to me. And sometimes I had doubts that I never had the feeling that it's the only church at all. I was very open to all kinds of religious beliefs and ways of being and living in the world. But for me, the Lutheran Church has been the place where I was born and that I will die. What role does faith play in my life? It's very important to me. I pray daily. I try to help somebody on a daily basis. I couldn't live without it. I have been fortunate to belong to a number of terrific Lutheran churches in my life. Like I said, starting from when I was preschool, all of them were good. But St. Mark's is a wonderful place for me and my belief, and for the people that we have in that congregation, and for the pastors that we've had in that congregation. I'm not sure there's a difference between vocation and avocation for me, because it seems to all wrap up together. I bought my nursing into my life and my life into nursing.